What is up, everybody? Welcome into another Friday afternoon AMA. We are so freaking close to the NFL season. I can almost taste it. Almost taste it. We are less than 2 weeks away from opening day. I'm so freaking excited. So welcome in everybody to the AMA. If you are new here, just ask a question. I go down through the order. So don't be offended if it take a while to get to your question because I'm just going down through the order and I talk a lot. But yeah, so we got questions in here already. Toronto Dave is in the chat as always. What's up, my man? Uh, Peter got in here bright and early this morning, basically when I set up the stream. He says he needs to cut two to add a kicker and a defense. Dumb that we have them in Dynasty. I agree. One quarterback. Love having handcuffs. Who would you cut from this group out of Trey Sermon, Khalil Herbert, Alexander Madison, Josh Palmer, Greg Dulcich, Kendre Miller? Yeah, if Kendrick can go on your IR, I think that's a very easy one. The other one would be Alexander Madison for me, as I don't necessarily view him as the same caliber of handcuff as Sermon and Herbert. If Madison is even the handcuff, it might be Dylan Labe, considering how he's been playing. Love Josh Palmer. I want to see what happens with Greg Dulcich, so I don't want to cut him yet. He might be somebody that you can cut in season, but I'm not ready to do that yet. So Kendre Miller and Alexander Madison would be the two players to cut for me. Or if Kendre goes to IR and you can still cut him, then that would be how I would go about it. Nice. Legend of Krakatoa. What can I realistically get from a Tyreek Hill trade? Is Nico and David Montgomery enough? I tried Nico in a first, but the guy countered. I would do Nico and David Montgomery. I'm assuming if you have Tyreek Hill, you're probably a contender. Or maybe you're trying to shed the age and reload a little bit. Maybe that's why you're trying to move Tyreek. But I'd be willing to move Tyreek for Nico Collins and David Montgomery as a contender. Because I think David Montgomery is going to be a very valuable player this year as a top 24 guy, and then have top 10, top 5 upside if/when Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt, just because of the nature I say if/when because of the nature of the running back position. Players get hurt. It's not super common for every single running back to play all 17 games. So Jahmyr Gibbs missed time last year. He's dealing with an injury right now. So it's possible that at some point during the year that David Montgomery is going to have games where he has the entire backfield to himself with Jahmyr Gibbs on the sideline. So I'm all for it from that point of view. I think Nico is going to be great. Obviously, trading away Tyreek Hill as a contender kind of sounds counterintuitive. You probably want to keep Tyreek Hill as a contender, but I think for this trade, it makes sense. Yeah, I understand going for Nico in a first. I understand why he also thought that was too much. But I would do Nico and David Montgomery. If you're rebuilding, I would probably not go for Demont, but I think as a contender, I think this is pretty solid. Tally ho, any advice for a shallow 8-team work league? My office has 16 people, but they split it into two 8-team divisions, each with separate pools of players. So basically you're in an 8-team league. Interesting. I don't know why you just don't make one big 16-team one, but maybe 2 8s is, I don't know. One quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receivers, tight end flex. Any advice on draft strategy? Seems like your running back strategy would work well in a push. Yeah, I'm not really all that concerned about quarterback for sure. You can get a lot of different quarterbacks in a start 8. Like you said, everybody's going to have basically one elite guy, so to speak. So I wouldn't really be worried about that. Tight end, basically everybody's going to have, I'm not going to say everybody's going to have an elite guy, but everybody's going to have a weekly starter. And I don't think that you need to go for, I'm a huge Kyle Pitts fan this year, and he's been going as like the tight end 6 or 7 off the board. So if you could wait to be one of the last teams to draft the tight end and it ends up being Kyle Pitts, then I think that would be pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, I think you just need to stock up as many elite running backs and wide receivers as you can. Probably going for hero or even double running back strategy would probably work. I think if you find yourself in the beginning of the first round or even like the mid-ish first round, you can get like Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson. I would be doing that. And then depending on what happens when you come back, if you can get a Kyron Williams or a Travis Etienne or get Devon Achane in the 3rd round. All depends on where you are in the draft, I think. But I mean, there's not really 8-team leagues are hard because I feel like there isn't really a strategy because it is so much more dependent on injury luck, rather than like actually like drafting well, because everybody's roster is going to be really good. So it's kind of hard to like give you one single strategy. I think you just need to stock up on running backs and make sure that you have enough of them, and then uh see where the rest of your draft kind of goes. That's I if I were you, I'd be pushing for a 16 team league. I think a 16 team league would be really fun. I've done that a couple times. Um, the league where all these trophies are from up there. I played in a 16 team. That was a 16 team league of a few years before a couple people dropped off because of adulthood, I guess. Matt, hey Addison, thoughts on the Dotson trade? um, I don't want to believe that Jahan Dotson is bad now. Philly obviously paid enough to like a third round pick for Dotson and a fifth is not insignificant. So obviously they still believe that there is talent there. I don't really know why Washington is so out on him and so ready to be done. I just I don't know. I have a hard time believing that Jahan Dotson is now all of a sudden bad. He was great as a rookie. He looked fine throughout most of the year last year too. He's just been kind of dealing with injuries and some other stuff. So I just don't really know what they see in everybody else that makes Jahan Dotson expendable. That could just be me, but I don't really know. So I guess we'll just kind of see what happens. I think Dotson, for the most part, for Dynasty is kind of dead, though, as the wide receiver 3 in Philly. I think it's a fantastic move for them. They've been trying to get a good wide receiver 3 for a while. They haven't been able to get that with Quez or like any of the other like slot-ish kind of receivers that they've had. So with Paris Campbell and Jahan Dotson now, I think Philly's offense is tremendous. And they love Penn State players, so double win for them and double win uh for Dotson going back to his hometown in Philly and PA. Roll Tide. Should I trade Jamar Chase for Ayuk and Michael Pittman in a one quarterback start 9? If you don't really have any other wide receivers, I think it makes sense. But I'd like to do this trade in the opposite direction. I'd like getting the Jamar Chase side on this in a start 9 because, I'd imagine that you probably have 3 or 4 pretty solid wide receivers. That's my guess. I'm not sure exactly what your wide receiver room looks like. But I would assume that you probably have more quality wide receivers than you are able to start on a weekly basis, especially when you toss in potentially who your RB3 is or anything like that. So I'd be willing to condense and consolidate at the wide receiver position. So I would take Jamar Chase here. It's not a bad offer for sure. I feel like in most scenarios you should be probably willing to do this, but I would just take Jamar Chase given that it's a start 9, and I like to trade up at the wide receiver position. AJ, pretty dedicated dynasty player. Feel like I'm a little late to the Devon Achane party. Feels like everybody likes him. How hard do I push to get him on one of my rosters? Currently have no shares. I mean, I view him as a borderline top 5 dynasty running back. I would be willing to, like, if you have like a Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, James Cook level of player, I would be trying to add. I'm not adding a first to any of them to move up to Achane, but if you can add a second or something kind of like that is around a first value, or maybe like bridges that gap of a first, but isn't really a second, but isn't really a first. You know what I'm trying to say? Um, like Rashad White in 2 seconds for Devon Achane, I think would make a lot of sense on both sides. And I'd be willing, I want the Devon Achane side on that. But I think other people would probably see Rashad White and 2 seconds and be like, oh, there's not really that much of a difference between Achane and White. So give me the 2 free seconds. That's how a lot of redraft people are drafting right now, too. They don't see much of a difference between Achane and White and Achane and Cook. And maybe Josh Jacobs as well is another player if you want to gain a little bit of age back and some more firepower, remove yourself from the red flags of Josh Jacobs of his inefficiency. I'm not concerned about it, but if you are, it would make sense. So that would be kind of where I'm looking at to acquire Devon Achane. I would throw a first and second for him, or if you can just get it done for one first, then I would be willing to do that. But I think a first and second makes more sense. Um, I wouldn't really, I don't really know what all you have or what all you're willing to do. But that would be kind of around where I would be looking at for trying to acquire Devon Achan. Nick with the 6.99 Canadian super chat. Appreciate you so much, Nick. Let's see. Yeah, you got a question in here. First time trying to figure out super chat. You're all good, man. Sorry, I just got to it a little bit late too. I apologize for that. But question for my 12 team, one quarterback contending dynasty team. I trade Olave and Walker, receive Neighbors and Chase Brown. 3 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 12 and 1 quarterback. My main issue with this is the difference between Walker and Chase Brown. I think that is a pretty drastic drop to where I want to sell off of Chris Olave. I'm very all in favor of moving off of Olave right now, and especially to go over to a player like Malik Neighbors. But value wise and perhaps even production wise for this year and maybe next year too, depending on the Daniel Jones situation, if New York gets better quarterback or if it's a rookie quarterback next year, who knows? But Neighbors might be he might be Garrett Wilson, he might be Chris Olave in terms of like his first 2 years are like really good from an NFL standpoint. Like he's 1,000-yard receiver, lots of volume, not a lot of touchdowns, not fantastic for fantasy, or not a massive difference maker for fantasy, you know? Um, so the difference between Olave and Neighbors for me, value wise and production wise for Dynasty, is not as large as the difference between Kenneth Walker and Chase Brown. I would not be surprised if Chase Brown is not even relevant at all this year. Um, or if he is relevant, I could see him being like Jalen Warren, where maybe you start him on the right weeks, maybe you don't, maybe he gets kind of thrown out of the game plan because it's just a Najee game. It could just be a Zach Moss game. You know what I'm trying to say? So like, whereas Kenneth Walker is like, you are starting him every single week. He is the RB1. So I think that's the difference for me between this trade, where I think that you need a better piece coming back than Chase Brown. Doesn't have to be a running back, but I think you need a better piece coming back than Chase Brown that is closer to the value of Kenneth Walker on the way back. Or replace Kenneth Walker with from an age standpoint, it could be Mixon. If it could do it with Zamir White, there it is, Zamir White. If you can get this to where it's Olave and Zamir White for Neighbors and Chase Brown, that is so much better. I would do it with that. That's where I would go. Or if you could get them to take Jerome Ford too, because Nick Chubb's not actively like on his way back from injury. That would be the alternative for me. Tally Ho with the $2 super chat. Thank you so much, my man. He's saying thank you, man. I'm gonna say thank you back for the $2. Nick, and thank you for the super chat as well. Hopefully that answered your question, and maybe you can try to rework that deal a little bit. Peter moved Dotson for a 27-second after the trade. 2027 is so far away, but I was going to cut him. So happy with it. That's phenomenal. Any second round pick for John Dotson, I think, is fantastic. I'm honestly, even before the trade, I feel like I would have taken this where he was still like the wide receiver 2 for Washington. Maybe I wouldn't have taken a 27-second, but I would probably have taken a 25-second. But now, like I said, with him in Philly, I think he's kind of dead. So a second round pick for a team wide receiver 3 is phenomenal right now, even if it's 3 years away. You wanted a 16-team league, but many casual players complain that they won't know people. Whatever. I still am. I would push harder for 16 teams and maybe make them shallower bench. I mean, what's 16 times? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13. $208 people would be rostered in your league in a 16 team. I'd venture to guess that most people would know 200 people, but maybe not. maybe you just don't have benches as deep. Maybe benches are, 3 or 4 deep, or maybe you cut one of your starters. Like instead of 2 running backs, you only start 1 running back and then still keep the flex and 2 running backs. And I don't know. Or just have two 8-team leagues. That's fine. Here for the memes. What's up, homie? What's up, my man? What's the most that you would spend on Devontae Adams as a contender? Single quarterback, start 3 wide receiver, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Garrett, Demario, Christian Watson. You have your 25 first still. Someone was curious about Charbon at 25 first, but it seems steep. I wouldn't even pay a 25 first for Adams. So I would stop there. I would do one of those running backs or one of these non-top 3 wide receivers plus a second for Devontae Adams, but you don't really need it because you already have your 3 wide receivers there and start 3 and Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Garrett, Wilson. So you would have to start him in your flex spot, but you also have 4 quality, I think top 20, if not top 15 running backs on a weekly basis with Barkley, Ramondre, Connor, and B-Rob. 4 top 24 to be safe. Plus the shots on Gibson and Charbonnet. If Kenneth Walker were to get hurt, Charbonnet would be a top 24 guy. If Ramondre got hurt, you could replace that with Antonio Gibson. He'd be a top 24 guy. And you have Zach Moss. So you have a lot of flexible options with a running back position to where you probably don't really need Devontae Adams, or at least you don't need him to pay up for him as like the ultimate, like, I'm a contender, I need Devontae Adams, I'm going to pay up to go get him to secure my championship. I don't think you need to do that. So Devontae Adams is not necessarily a need for you. If you want to trade your 25 first, I would be looking for players that are younger, that have more longevity. So if you could trade that first for T. Higgins or DK Metcalf, or trade it, flip it for, Jackson Smith and Jigba or somebody like that, I feel like that would be a better use of your first than going and get Devontae Adams, who is seen as a 1 to 2 year rental at most, at a position that you don't really need right now. So I feel like you probably don't need Devontae Adams, or probably shouldn't want him at those prices that you're mentioning of paying 25 first or first plus. Jamie, what's up, my man? Welcome in. Welcome in. Ashley M. Michael, tear it down to the ground, rebuild, 10 teams, start 8, 1 quarterback, but going to 2 QB in 2 years, have 425 first, 226 first. Would you trade Pickens for a mid 25 first, or just hold at this point? I would keep George Pickens right now, unless you have like the most massive concern in the world about Brandon Ayuk going there. If Ayuk doesn't go to if Ayuk resigns in San Fran and doesn't go to Pittsburgh, I would easily take George Pickens over a mid 2025 1 quarterback first round pick. The wide receiver class next year looks pretty solid. At the top, you have like 3 really good elite prospects in Burden, Tet McMillan, and Stewart, the Oregon wide receiver. Is it Evan Stewart? I'm not sure if that's right, but I think it's Stewart. Anyway, the kid that was across from Troy Franklin, rest in peace. Apparently he's bad. But after them, I think George Pickens would be a better prospect than, at least right now, from what I'm seeing of the class. After those top 3, I think George Pickens would be a better player than anybody else after that. And then, of course, you get the running backs in there too. But there's no real like massive RB that you need to go out and get next year. There's just a lot of really good, potentially good running backs. But I think George Pickens is set for a breakout year if he is the wide receiver 1 for Pittsburgh. If Ayuk doesn't get traded there, I think that he could have a really good year with Russell Wilson, who just kind of revitalized Cortland Sutton. Or if it's Justin Fields, Fields just gave DJ Moore a top 8 fantasy finish and unlocked DJ Moore, finally saving him from the back end wide receiver 2 production he had in Carolina. So no matter who the quarterback is, I'm not worried about the Arthur Smith offense. If it's George Pickens in that offense. So as long as Ayuk isn't there, I would easily take Pickens over a first. But if you really, really think that Pickens is going to get Brandon Ayuk, then you could trade him for a first. It's not bad. It's not a bad price point either. I'm personally not concerned about Ayuk. You traded Love, Pickens, and a third for Herbert and 2 first. Dude, I buyer's remorse, and I bought Pickens back for Stafford, a second and a third. Now I can sell him for another first and maybe a throw in. Well, both of those trades were fantastic. I get it, but there's, are you trying to? I mean, you're on a tear it down to the ground rebuild, but I think Pickens is a really good rebuilding asset. You don't got to worry about, there comes a point where you still need to keep some of your young players on your team rather than just re-rolling for first, because you're hoping that the player that you take with a first next year has the start to his career like George Pickens has had so far and has the opportunity that Pickens potentially has heading into this year. And even if you're not a Pickens fan, I think that you could get more for him in a month or two if he's producing like how, and not even to where like how I think that he is. I think that he's just showing that he's the alpha wide receiver one for Pittsburgh. I think that you can get more than a first in a month or two once we actually start seeing it. Michael, running back, Samir, Ford, Spears, Rico. Think I have enough firepower at wide receiver to roll with that running back room. Kyler McBride, quarterback, tight end stack. That's pretty solid. I definitely think that you have enough firepower at the wide receiver position. CeeDee Lamb is fantastic. Marvin Harrison Jr. should be a top, for safety, top 15 wide receiver, if not even top 12, which is with the opportunity. I think Waddle can return to being a top 12 receiver this year. I think Rashee Rice has the ability to be top 18 or 15 if he's not suspended by the end of the year. I love BTJ. I absolutely love him. I'm a little worried on Reed and Addison, but as your wide receivers, I'm going to call them 5 and 6. I'm going to have BTJ ahead of Reed and Addison, but so as your wide receivers 5 and 6, that's phenomenal. I think what you could do, I don't know how many players that you start. You said it's just a one quarterback, but I don't know how many players that you start to where you could potentially look at moving Reed and Addison and maybe even package both of them with running backs that you have for better running backs. So like, can you turn Jaden Reed and Zamir White into, Isaiah Pacheco or Josh Jacobs or somebody like that, and then do the same thing with Jaden Reed and Tyjae Spears and get another running back that's kind of like in that range, or if you add a second on top of that, does that vault you up to get a Kenneth Walker or a Travis Etienne, get up into there? Somebody's really down, depending on the values in your league, or just flip Reed or Addison right now straight up for like a David Montgomery or a Ramondre Stevenson. That might be better use of your assets. So then you can move towards having better startable running backs while still having Lamb, Marvin Harrison Jr., Waddle, and Rice and BTJ. That might be something that you might want to look at doing. Caleb, what's up, man? Which package for Addison, Etienne, and Addison? 12-team Superflex, Jacobs, Adams, Fields in a second, or Waddle and Jalen Warren? Interesting. So Caleb and I were talking about the Jacobs-Adams trade already. I said I'd be willing to trade Etienne and Addison for the Jacobs side on this one, but the Waddle one now coming in. Interesting. I think I still prefer the Jacobs side, but this is really close. I'm trying to think if I would trade the Jacobs side for Waddle and Warren. I'm not the biggest Jalen Warren fan. Like I would take Waddle. I would take Jacobs over Warren very easily, but Waddle then over the rest of it. It's a fair trade on all accounts of it. I think I still go with the Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams side on this. Because then you get the shot on Justin Fields and you get the 26 second, but that's close. That's close. Seth, in a 12-team best ball, would you take Jermaine Burton or Jalen Polk? Also, how would you rank these guys? Braylon, Bucky, Ray, Ty Chandler, Rico Dowdle. I would take Jalen Polk over Jermaine Burton. because Polk is in line for wide receiver one duties, and Jermaine Burton currently cannot get on the field in the preseason with starters. I Burton is a great upside shot for dynasty, but in terms of best ball, I would take Polk if this is just for this year, or even for dynasty. I would take Polk over Burton easily. Um, and then how would I rank all the handcuffs? I would go my Ray Davis love. I would go Davis, Dowdle, Chandler, Bucky, Braylon. They're all fantastic. I would love to have all of these guys. I prefer Ray Davis because I think that he has a shot of being the most relevant while the starter is still healthy. And then I think Dowdle is right next to that. I think that Zeke is going to outproduce Dowdle this year, but Dowdle has an opportunity. Um, and then I think Ty Chandler has the best opportunity as a handcuff behind a very injury prone running back and old running back. Bucky has an opportunity to be valuable, but that offense just feels really weird. And Rashad White is still there. So that offense, that like Bucky feels like he's going to be volume dependent in that offense, like how Rashad White was. But with Rashad White there stealing volume, I don't know. Like I like Bucky, but I don't know if I prefer him more than the upside shot of Ty Chandler being the team RB1 if Aaron Jones were to get hurt, which has been a pretty decent chance every year. And then Braylon, like I love Braylon Allen too. He's the for sure handcuff for Breece Hall, but if Breece Hall is fantastic, and I don't know if he's going to get hurt again. I think he has the lowest odds of getting hurt out of all of the other compared to Aaron Jones and compared to Zeke and Rashad White and James Cook and stuff. So I think Breece Hall has the lowest chance of getting hurt. So that's kind of my thought process on that. Cody, redraft non-PPR, White or Jacobs? Jacobs, easily. And then Debo, Marv, Waddle, or Ayuk. I would go Marvin Harrison Jr. there of those four wide receivers, but then I would go Waddle, Ayuk, then Debo is how I would rank the other three. Yeah. Yeah. Non-PPR. Yeah. I'll go for Marvin Harrison Jr. as the first wide receiver there. And I'll go for Josh Jacobs at the running back position. Cartoon Network, we got IP infringement in here. Hold on one second. Always got to stay hydrated when we're talking. Have a 10 team, one quarterback startup, veteran only draft, picking 10th. If I don't get any of Breece, Bijan, or Gibbs, I'm thinking of double wide receiver and find running back value later. Thoughts on strategy? I don't draft running backs in dynasty startups that early anyway. So I absolutely love the strategy. If I were you, I would be taking double wide receiver regardless. I mean, I guess if you're picking 10th in a 10 team, one QB and Breece or Bijan or Gibbs are there, value wise, I feel like you have to. I'd imagine those three are not there as they are top 7 or 8 assets in one quarterback. So they probably won't get to you. But then, yeah, I would go double wide receiver. I don't know if there's Achane would be the only one that would be tempting, but I don't think I would take him at 110 or 201. Especially not over, you might get Puka down there. You might get Marvin Harrison Jr. down there. I'd take AJ Brown over Achane or any of these guys too. So Garrett Wilson, you're going to get some 2 really good quality elite wide receivers and pass on running backs there. And then you can fill in with running backs much later, as teams look at drafting wide receivers, especially the teams that drafted Breece, Bijan, Gibbs, JT, Achane, all those guys. They're going to be looking at later round wide receivers. You're going to be looking at running backs down in there. You can get, a Ramondre, a David Montgomery. You can get Javonte really cheap. You can get James Conner really cheap. And you have the elite young wide receiver core already at the top. Maybe you can grab a Mark Andrews or a Kyle Pitts or somebody like that. And then fill in the running backs later on with cheap win now guys. And that's how you win in 2024 and still build for the future. And just turn out your running backs every year. Jeremiah, can you give us some guys that you're looking to acquire this year, trying to contend and finding value at running back is tough unless you overpay by quite a bit. Well, I just named a handful of running backs that I like to try to acquire. Monty Stevenson, um, Connor, Aaron Jones, um, even honestly, like Raheem Mostert would be a good pick for this year. You could try for like Chuba Hubbard for a couple thirds to start out the year. I think would work too. Those would be running backs that I would be looking at um, to try to contend this year. Javante was another one I forgot. I mentioned him with Cartoon Network, but yeah, I would be trying to buy Javante too. Basically, the name of the game for me at running back is cheap quantity over quality. That is how I'm looking at it. Because if I can give myself more options every single week of guys that I can play matchups for, I can insulate myself with injuries by having more players. Just having more startable guys or even more handcuffs that have the opportunity to be startable. That's how I want to go at the running back position. And that is what keeps me uh, and staying lean at the wide receiver position, maybe going for an elite tight end and staying lean there allows me to roster more of those running backs. That's kind of how my strategy works at the position. Um, so I'd be going for, I don't know what kind of trades that you've been trying to, or what kind of running backs that you've been looking to get as a contender, but I'd be trying for those other guys rather than, like the Cooks and the Pachecos and the Walkers and the Whites and all those kind of guys. Go for a little bit cheaper and see maybe if you can get some of them. What on top of Kittle would be enough to trade up for McBride? A first is too much, but a second is not enough. So you got to be somewhere in between there. Maybe it's Kittle and a first for McBride and a second, to where if it's a late first and maybe like a mid to late second or even early second, that would work. That's probably what you're going to be looking at. First is too much, second is not enough, but probably somewhere in that little sweet spot is where you're kind of looking at for trading up. Because the Kittle's value is interesting because if Ayuk gets traded, Kittle's value is going to go up. But I don't think Ayuk is getting traded. I think he's staying in San Fran. So there is that. Here for the memes with the $2 super chat. I didn't even see this come across the board. I completely missed this. I'm so sorry, man. But thank you so much for the $2 super chat. What is the best that I can get for a late 25 first? If you're looking at the wide receiver position, which is probably where I would be going for, I would start with like the DK Metcalf, T Higgins level. I would look at those two. I'd look and see if you could see maybe if you can get Tank Dell, if you can get Rashee Rice, maybe you can get Brian Thomas Jr. or Xavier Worthy. George Pickens would be in there. It's a solid handful list of guys that I'd be trying to aim with my 2025 first. I don't know if you can get any higher than that. Like if you can get Pittman for a first, that'd be great. If you can get DJ Moore or Odunze or Nico for a first, that would be fantastic. I don't think you're getting there. But I think if you aim for the Metcalf, T. Higgins, Tank Dell, Pickens range, I think you can snag one of them for a first round pick. I just offer any manager who has any of those kind of wide receivers, I just send a first round pick. Whoever accepts it first wins. And that's how it would be. Jacob, Nelson Aguilar or Justin Jefferson this season? Oof. Tough question. Keep up the good work. Thank you, my man, Jacob. Thank you. Jamie, is saying Kenneth Walker would be a top 5 running back bold enough, or do I need to go to top 3? No, I think top 5 is definitely bold. Honestly, even to say that he's going to be a top 12 or top 10 running back feels bold considering that he has not been higher than RB18 on the season yet in his 2 years. So honestly, him just saying that he's going to be a top 10 guy, I feel like is pretty bold. So top 5 is definitely there. You are hot enough for me. And don't need to go to top 3 because I think that's wild. John, what's up, my man? Yeah, I've missed my my moderator and my question answer in the chat for quite a while. So glad to see you back in here, man, and thank you. Thank you for the well wishes and congrats on becoming a dad. It's definitely been a journey, but it's been really really fun and enjoyable, and yeah, he's still fantastic. He still sleeps really well. Yesterday he slept from we put him down at like 7:30 last night. It's not like we were actively putting him down. Like he just like kind of fell asleep, and so we put him up in his crib, and he did not wake up until about 6 a.m. this morning. So I know we're lucky on that. So it's fun. And we're very thankful, but it's been very enjoyable. Peter, weeks 12 and 14 buys are brutal. Never really count for buys in Dynasty. Anything you would do or just hope to win enough early on that it doesn't matter. Practically all of my starters are out week 12 or 14. Well, there's a double-edged sword for that one. Sucks that all of your starters are out for those weeks, but also if there is something to be said about if all of your players are out for one bye week, then you don't have to worry about, oh, I lost Tyreek Hill this week, and then and 2 weeks later, then I lost Brees Hall, and then another week I lost, Kyler Murray. And then you have to fight for wins in individual weeks when your studs are out. But if all of your studs have same bye weeks, if you could just chalk up that L, but you're still dominant for the other 13 or 14 weeks of the season, then there's a strategy in that too. Not saying that you are building out your dynasty rosters based on bye weeks, and there's no way of knowing what the bye weeks are for 2025 or anything like that. But there's a silver lining, I think, there that you could kind of look to, if that makes you feel better, Peter, about your bye weeks. I don't think there would be anything really that I would do. I would just try to win as many games as you possibly can, and if you consider those 2 weeks as L's, then just try to not have that ruin your playoff shots. Try to get to 8-2 or 9-1 or even like 7-3 before you get to week 11, 12, 13, 14. It's the bye weeks are basically just dice rolls, luck of the draws. But if you wanted that silver lining of maybe it is kind of better that they're all of your studs have the same bye weeks, then chalk up those L's and be dominant for the other 12 or 13 weeks. There you go. Then you get into the playoffs and then you're totally fine. Brian, what are your opinions on Jahan Dotson after the trade to the Eagles? I'm considering trading him or Josh Palmer for Jerry Jeudy. The only player that I want out of these three is Josh Palmer. I don't want Dotson. I don't want Jerry Jeudy. I mean, I guess I would trade Dotson for Jeudy, but I don't know what that really does for you, So I'd be wanting to trade Dotson, but I don't know what Jeudy does for you any differently. They feel like the same player. They're both like the wide receiver 3-ish. I mean, Jeudy is competing with Elijah Moore, but they're both behind Amari Cooper. And they both, Deshaun Watson's not a great quarterback, and he has David Njoku to worry about too. And it still kind of can be a run first team with Ford and Nick Chubb coming back, and Deonta Foreman is stealing goal line touches. So I don't know. I want Palmer. I'd take Palmer. I'd take Palmer over Jerry Jeudy because at least I think he has upside as the wide receiver 1 this year. And I would take Jalen McMillan over Jahan Dotson. It's the same thing with McMillan because then he's behind Evans and Godwin. Like what? Let's see. Can you get like Javon Baker for Jahan Dotson? Is that possible? Or can you get Wandale or Brandon Cooks? What about any of those guys for Jahan Dotson? Or even like Greg Dortch or somebody. Like I feel like there's just so many different options of receivers that have more upside than any of these kind of guys. Or trade him for like Tyler Lockett, even if you can. If somebody like really hates Tyler Lockett, go trying to get or trade for Josh Downs if he's hurt right now. If the manager's looking for production, that might not be possible. Dontavian Wicks, Khalil Shakir, any of the Buffalo Bills wide receivers, honestly. But yeah, I'd take all of those guys over Jerry Jeudy and Jahan Dotson. There's just no upside with either of them, so I don't really want them. Jamie, please hit the like button. We have 42 watching, only 11 likes. Thank you so much, Jamie. He's my like button. Already have Wandale. Already have Josh Downs. Oh, nice. So, yeah, try for Javon Baker or Brandon Cooks or somebody. There's got to be somebody that's different that has upside. Because these guys, they're just basically all roster cloggers. Like Palmer would have been a guy that I would say go trade Jahan Dotson for Josh Palmer right now, but you already have Palmer. So, Vince, Etienne, Addison, McConkey for Garrett Wilson and Kenneth Walker. I'll take Garrett Wilson and Kenneth Walker pretty easily here in this one. Even to start 11, you could start all three of those guys, but I'd rather have Garrett Wilson over Etienne, and I'd take the extra value from that one and apply it to Kenneth Walker, and that would be better than Addison and McConkey. Or if you flip it around, I would much rather have Garrett Wilson than Addison and McConkey, and I'd take Etienne over Kenneth Walker, but that difference is so much smaller than it is Wilson over Addison and McConkey. So give me the 2 on the 2 for 3. To add on the Tyreek trade from earlier, I'm rebuilding, but currently the 4th best team. Interesting. If I do the trade for Nico and Monty, who/what should I trade Monty for? Would that trade mean that you're not rebuilding? Like, could you you're saying that you're rebuilding, but you're the 4th best team. Does that mean that you have like superpowers ahead of you? Is that what you're trying to go for? Like you just have like utter extreme monsters in 1st and 2nd place right now that you're like, you know what, I'll build for 2025 or 2026 when those teams are going to start to age down. Because like if you're telling me that you have the 4th best team, but you're rebuilding, that tells me that you're not necessarily rebuilding, or that you have pieces that you could make the push if you wanted to, or maybe not even make the push. You don't have to make the push now, but you could see what happens in September. And if you're like 3-1 through the first 4 weeks, you could try to do something. But if you made that trade for Nico and Monty, which I would still do, you could take Monty into the season, see if you can get a 1st round pick for him when Jahmyr Gibbs is out, or if Jahmyr Gibbs is out. Maybe add a 2nd to him and then get a 1st round pick. That could work. Or try to go and move for like a younger wide receiver, like maybe you get like Christian Watson or BTJ or maybe, I don't know, somebody like along those lines of young upside wide receivers that maybe haven't necessarily hit yet, or maybe have rough starts to the year. Maybe you could trade Monty for Jordan Addison. Maybe that's the ultimate play. Somebody like that, where it's like their situation right now is like really rough. They're not producing, but they still have upside in the future. Maybe it's JSN. Maybe it's Monty for Adonai Mitchell in a 2026 2nd and something or something. Yeah, there are options I think that you have for David Montgomery to where it's still a win for you if you trade Tyreek. 4th best top 3 teams are way OP. Okay, I have 2 first the next 2 years. I want to gear up and contend next year after the rosters age more. The top 2 teams are very old. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so and probably I would assume that one of those teams is trying to trade for Tyreek Hill. Is probably what's happening. Do they have any other kind of like rebuildy kind of pieces other than David Montgomery on this team? I'd be curious to see what else they have too. Because they're not sending you the 1st. You already tried that. Monty feels like a good bridge though. But then you'd have to trade Monty to the other like way OP team, or somebody who thinks that they could contend with the OP teams. So that narrows down your trade options. So maybe that's a negative for that. He tried already, John. That was the initial offer, and the guy rejected. Sent JJ in a 3rd and a 4th for Tank, Najee, Rome, and an early to mid 25 first. League is actually adding an extra flex spot next season. Currently 10 teams start 10. Fair return, great, bad, question mark. I'd rather just have Justin Jefferson. Just because your league's adding an extra roster spot doesn't mean that you needed to mortgage the best player on your roster. um, like Najee might not even be relevant for this to make sense next year, and then Tank Dell, you know, I really like Tank Dell, but he's the wide receiver 2 on his team, maybe wide receiver 3 this year. Same goes for Rome. If that first is any at all mid and not early, um, and I don't know if this is a one quarterback or not. If it's a one quarterback, that makes the first a little bit worse too. Um, Man, I'd rather just have Justin Jefferson and find other ways to try to get different, try to fill in your flex spots. Ah. Should I consider moving off of Olave? I'm in a league of Ohio State fans. Should I trade for Nico Collins? Yes. What kind of value would you add or ask for? Same question for Waddle. Anyone else that you would consider? So I have Olave behind Nico Collins, behind Jalen Waddle, behind Brandon Ayuk, behind Drake London. I have him much lower. I have Olave down in like the Michael Pittman range, DJ Moore range. And that's strictly just because of hoping that he can produce. If he doesn't produce or has another season like he had the past couple of years, where he's just kind of like wide receiver 21, 22 in fantasy, then he's going to fall behind those other guys. And then he's going to be down in like where we're talking about George Pickens and T. Higgins and Brian Thomas Jr. right now. Like I could see all those guys being ahead of Olave by this time next year too. So I would very easily move. If you can get anything added on top of Waddle or Nico to do that, I would do that. I would add up to, I probably wouldn't add a second, but I'd be really tempted to add a second just to make that move. You probably don't need to though. Olave in a third, Olave and something fun from your bench that is kind of maybe like a second, but maybe not really a second. But yeah, I would do that for Nico or Waddle or Ayuk or if you have something bigger, then you can go up to get Puka or AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson. I'm really scared about Chris Olave and what his value is going to do. AJ, one quarterback start, 8 starters are Hurts, Bijan, Brees. Holy crap. Trade Olave away for a first and smaller pieces. Yeah, there you go. That could potentially work out too. 225 first. Should I just go nuts and trade away 3 firsts and Diggs for CD? Oh man. Do you need to trade away all 3? Like, could you do 2 firsts and Stephon Diggs? I'd probably start there. 2 firsts and Diggs. Or even if it was McConkey, Diggs in a first, maybe you can take advantage of Lad McConkey hype. Or if it was, yeah, I'd probably do it. I would probably do this. I'd probably just go get CD Lamb. I'd try for not paying 3 firsts and Diggs. I would try 2 firsts and Diggs, or 2 firsts and McConkey, or a first McConkey and Diggs. But at the end of the day, if it takes 3 firsts and Diggs to just go get CD Lamb and to start 8, just give me CD Lamb. The question: Marv, Pittman, BTJ, JSN, Jaden Reed, best option to pair with Kincaid to get a running back to move from rebuild window to competitive. Probably Jaden Reed. I would like to move Jaden Reed. That would be of the 5 guys on this list. I think Jaden Reed is the most movable for me. Now, in terms of giving you the best running back, not that one. I'm just double checking on the analyzer so I have the players in my head. Kincaid and Reed. Okay, I was right. So Kincaid and Reed should get you relatively close to the like Pacheco, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane tier as kind of like after the elite guys and Christian McCaffrey, maybe not JT, but like I could see like if you're in that kind of 6 through 10, 7 through 10 range, you can just go get one of them with Jaden Reed and Dalton Kincaid. If you can get any higher than that, that would be fantastic. You might honestly be able to get JT for that. Um, but I would also do it for ETN or HN. Those would be the three that I would hardcore go for. If you can go after Pacheco, you might get something back with Pacheco. Or maybe just trade Kincaid for like Josh Jacobs and do that. I'm a big Josh Jacobs fan, so if you could do that, that'd be cool too. I bet you haven't been golfing as much. I actually have not been golfing at all since he's been born. It's been like he's like 9 or 10 weeks old now. Jeez, how old is he? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He was 10 weeks old yesterday. So I have not golfed in 10 and a half weeks. I golfed the Sunday before he was born. Have not been since. Nick, having my redraft draft this weekend. 10 teams Superflex, half PPR, full PPR for tight ends. Have picked 6. Thoughts on who to take? We're all Browns, Bengals fans, so no Ravens or Steelers. Thank you. So no Lamar Jackson or Mark Andrews or rip. So actually, funny thing about this, Nick, is I have a video dropping. I don't know if people know that I've been making content on 4 for the past month either. 4 for is the redraft fantasy football website under the entire BetSperts umbrella. So they acquired DLF for the dynasty, acquired 4 for the redraft. And I manage all the YouTube channels under the BetSperts organization and create content for DLF, obviously. But this summer, I started creating content for 4 for. So there's a bunch of content over there from like my redraft stuff. And on Monday, I am dropping a video on the best picks in every single round. And I kind of talk about it I give you a handful of picks in each round. And then I kind of give you like at the very end of the video, like an ideal draft from kind of like the earlier first compared to the later first, kind of like how that looks from both angles. So I don't think Breece Hall is going to get to you at pick 6. If he does, phenomenal. That's fantastic. But at pick 6, then I would be looking, you're probably at like the Amon-Ra range. I'd take Amon-Ra at 106 if Breece Hall is not there. You can come back and probably get like a Kyron Williams or a Travis Etienne. And then in the third round, if Devon Achane is there, I say it in the video, but you're legally obligated to take Devon Achane in the third round of redraft leagues this year. So if he's there, that's a smash. It could be Nico. It could be Cooper Kupp in the third. I would say Mark Andrews in the fourth, but you're anti-Ravens. So that's why you get Kyle Pitts in like the 5th or 6th. Or maybe you take Pitts in the 4th. I don't know how your league drafts with the tight end premium. But Pitts would be an option for tight end. Then you get guys like David Montgomery or James Conner, Ramondre, Javonte, any of those kind of running backs later. You get like a BTJ or a Christian Kirk and maybe Kyler, Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott at the quarterback position. Bada bing, bada boom. Championship. That's how it is. But yeah, that video drops on Monday. It's like a 25-minute video. It took me forever to freaking make that. Spent like all day yesterday scripting it, recording it, editing it. Big video. But I think it's good. So that drops on Monday on 4 for. So if you're already on YouTube, if you just type in 4 for fantasy, head on over there. I've been creating content, and the other Justin Edwards, has been my Justin on that side too. So I have a Justin on each side. So he's been creating content as well. So that's my redraft pitch. Promo code YouTube to sign up. You get 25% off on 4 for. Promo code YouTube. There you go. There's my redraft pitch. Cuddy Forever. Have a good deal for Saquon on the table as a contender, but do you like to wait to buy running backs or get them now because the in-season market will change? We'll have to give up my contending first. I would trade a first-round pick for Saquon right now. You don't have to wait, I don't think, in season for you to do that. Generally, I like to just wait in season just to see what happens, make sure that players survive training camp and preseason injury wise. Injuries can happen whenever, but if you could wait till the last possible minute to make a trade, that's always better anyway. Um, but I think in this scenario, I would take Saquon Barkley over a late contenders first round pick pretty easily. I think that's a pretty good value win. So I'd be willing to make that deal now. That's like, would you trade? What do you wait on buying running backs, or should you trade a first round pick for Christian McCaffrey? I'd be like, well, it's Christian McCaffrey, so I'll take that. So I feel this. It's to a lesser degree because I would take Saquon, or I would take CMC over Saquon, but that's kind of the comparison, the thought process that goes on in my head. Mr. Mole. Hey, Addison, redraft 12 team, one quarterback, two running back, two wide receiver, blah, blah, blah position. What position would you prioritize in the first 5 rounds? So it kind of depends on where you're at. I think if you find yourself towards the beginning of the first round, then I think you put yourself in a decent position to have running back to start. Ultimately, I feel like through 5 rounds, I've found that my teams have become very balanced. I think that's just an ADP thing that kind of like no matter where you are on the board, there's value at each position at different points of the draft. So like I said, at the earlier points, I like to leave my draft with CMC, Brees, or Bijan. And then just based on how ADP kind of goes, you're able to land like a Travis Etienne in like kind of like the mid to late second, or a Devon Achane is in there too. If Kyron kind of slips, then I like that. And then in the third, maybe Derrick Henry's kind of in like the early to mid second, so that kind of is dependent too. Then in the third round, you end up. I really like values on wide receivers in the third round with Nico, with Cooper Kupp. Fourth round, if you can get Jalen Waddle in the fourth, I would even take Jalen Waddle in the third, but fourth round looks good for Waddle and DK Metcalf or Mark Andrews. So I actually, and the same happens like later in the draft too. Like if you're later in the first round, I like taking Amon-Ra or AJ Brown or somebody like that at the wide receiver position. Then you can get maybe like a JT or a Kyron in the early second, and then the late second, you end up still getting Cooper Kupp is a late third round or late third round. In the third round, in the late third, Cooper Kupp is there in the ADP. Nico's like a mid third rounder right now. Or like I said, I would take Jalen Waddle in the late third. And then fourth and fifth rounds, are also pretty good spots for wide receivers. So I feel like I find that my teams are pretty balanced through 5 rounds. And that includes also potentially getting a tight end in there too. So I think it just kind of depends on where you're at, what draft position that you have, and depends on which position you take in which round, but it feels pretty balanced by the end of it. Let's see. John is killing it in the chat as always. John will always answer questions. Board had the 102 traded up to 103 in a super flex, went Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors. Awesome. With A-Rich as my only QB heading into the draft, ended up moving other pieces and got A-Rich and Bo Nix. Thoughts? Like it. I would have taken Jaden Daniels over Malik Neighbors, but that is what it is. But I think that you're going to be looking pretty solid as a contender with Anthony Richardson, Aaron Rodgers as your QB2, Bo Nix is your upside QB3. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors should both be top 24, top 25 guys. Marvin Harrison probably closer to being a wide receiver 1, if not a wide receiver 1. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the rest of your team looks like, but I like the way that you attack this so far. Cody, 14 team, 1 quarterback PPR competing. Does it make sense to tier down from CeeDee Lamb? If so, what should I ask for? If you can, I'm worried about trading too far down from CeeDee Lamb. I usually like to trade up at the wide receiver position, but if you can trade down to Puka or AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson and potentially even get like a first on top to do that, I would love that. If you could trade down to Nico and get something like very big on top, like a first plus on top of Nico, I'd be willing to do that. Um, After that, I like Waddle. I like Ayuk in that range, but you need like some big pluses to tear down from CeeDee Lamb. Um, so honestly, like I feel like I'd rather just keep him, but it really just depends on the rest of your roster looks like, what offers you're even getting for CeeDee Lamb, to see if that even makes sense. It's hard to say, like, just in a vacuum doesn't make sense. I don't really know. I'd like to just have CeeDee Lamb. So I might just keep CeeDee Lamb. But if the offers make sense, then that's what I think. Then if the offers make sense, then it makes sense, you know? Do you have a Super Bowl prediction yet? I think the Lions beat the Bengals, but I would love to see the Jets lose to the Packers because F Aaron Rodgers. um, I have a hard time seeing anybody come out of the NFC that's not San Fran or Detroit. Dallas maybe, but it's basically those two teams. I think San Fran ultimately wins out though, because I think San Fran is just that much better. Um, and then out of the AFC, there's a lot of different teams. It's hard to not pick the Chiefs and just have another San Fran Kansas City rematch. I don't think the Bengals are good enough to get there. I don't think the Texans are good enough to get there yet. I think the Bills probably won't get there. The Ravens would be fun, but we've been trying to predict the Ravens for a while. So again, it feels so easy to just pick the San Fran Kansas City rematch, but it just feels so likely, you know? I just don't know if the Bengals get there. I don't think the Jets get there either. I don't think that team's good enough. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with picking the rematch, I guess. How chalk of me. Ego sold Trey Benson, Brian Thomas, Tank, and a late first for CMC and Diggs. Too much? I don't like Stephon Diggs. So I'm gonna cross off Diggs in a 26 first. So it's BTJ, Tank, and Trey Benson for CMC. I feel like as a hardcore contender, that probably makes sense, especially depending on how many starters you actually start. But I feel like that probably was a little bit too much, but that might just be because I don't like Stephon Diggs. If it was another player that had a similar value to Diggs that wasn't Diggs, I might not be against it. Um, but it just as like that's a lot of youth. And if CMC got hurt this year, or if Diggs didn't do anything well, like this trade could look really bad a year from now, on the CMC side, to where all of that other youth is just only going to gain value from here. So if you win the championship this year, though, it's not going to matter. You would win the championship, but it does feel like a little bit too much. That, yeah. I mean, go win a championship. There's also that. Shout out to the stream. It's nice to be able to ask questions where super chats don't rule the world. I mean, hey, if you want to toss some super chats out, I won't be opposed to it. If everybody here, every time they asked a question, did it as a $1 super chat, I would not be opposed to that. I'm just kidding. You guys definitely don't. It's definitely don't do that. No. I appreciate just hanging out with everybody. That's the favorite part of this stream for me. Like I just really appreciate hanging out with everybody, and you guys are like, I've gotten to the point where this stream is kind of like an every week thing. You guys are expecting it. Everybody in here is fantastic. You asked really great questions. You are appreciative of criticism if I were to give criticism, or you're thankful for the advice. And as of right now, nobody's come back and yelled at me for a bad take, but we'll see if that changes in season. But no, I just appreciate hanging out with everybody. You guys are super awesome to hang out, and it makes Friday streams like really, really enjoyable to do. So I appreciate it. Athlete critique and a half PPR. What would you add on to Deontay to get Cooper Kupp? I would try to do a second round pick. I feel like that's a pretty solid bridge between the gaps of the two guys. So I would start with a second. I would not pay a first. I wouldn't pay Deontay in a first. But I would start with a second. If it's 2 seconds, then sure. If it's a 25 and a 26, then sure. Um, but I wouldn't go up to a first round pick. But anything kind of less than that, I feel like is good value. Hey, if you can get CD for 2 firsts and Diggs, you never know, man. People really like Stephon Diggs. But I would also do it with McConkey and 2 firsts. Ba-ba-ba-ba. You guys are crushing it. Please do. I texted my friend today and I said, can we please go golfing tonight? Because I wanted to go golfing today. And he reminded me that he was leaving for vacation and won't be back until next weekend. So I'm like, I might have to go by myself. Might have to go golfing myself. Get Hall and Bijan at the 106 and go wide receiver in the second round. This is basically perfect. My issue, though, is I don't like a lot of second round wide receivers. I don't know if I like any of them in redraft this year. That's kind of my issue. That's why I lean towards Kyron or ETN because I like the value of wide receiver in the third and the fourth, and I don't like the wide receivers in the second. That's my main issue. Would you move Jermaine Burton for Josh Palmer? Probably. But I also understand if people would just take Jermaine Burton. Like they're both just upside shots. So whoever you believe has a better shot of hitting on that upside, I would take. So if you believe that Jermaine Burton is better than Josh Palmer and has better shot of being hitting on that upside over the next year or two, then take Jermaine Burton. I think Josh Palmer is the wide receiver 1 for LA. So personally, if I'm looking, especially as a contending team, if I'm looking at my roster and Palmer is my wide receiver 5 or 6 instead of Jermaine Burton, I feel better about it. So that's where I come from. But if you're rebuilding, I feel like taking Jermaine Burton also makes sense. So maybe there's that nuance to that too. Kyron and Christian Kirk or London and a third in a 12-team PPR Superflex. Honestly, I think I take Kyron and Christian Kirk here. And again, this kind of is for me the difference. It's the third round pick that's weighing me down on this. If that third was the second, then I would take London in a second because then it would basically be Kyron versus London and then Kirk versus the second. So I would take London in a second there. But because it's a third, then I would take Kyron and Christian Kirk. That's the difference for me between the two sides. Brendan, value of Trey Palmer, a third or a fourth, currently either dropping Juwan Jennings for roster cuts or accepting Trey Palmer for a 27 fourth. I would trade Palmer for a fourth. If you can get a third, then cool. But I'd rather get a 4th round pick instead of dropping somebody. Although, yeah, no, I would take a 4th round pick for Trey Palmer. And if you can get a 4th round pick for Juwan Jennings too, then that's fine. But Juwan Jennings might be like a cut by the beginning of the year for somebody better. Don't sell for a 4th. I would not pay a 2nd round pick for Trey Palmer. Is he even the wide receiver 3? Because McMillan's there now as the 3. Or the 3A, 3B. That's why I think Palmer is good for the NFL. I don't think he's worth a second. His value is probably more of a third, but if you're just going to cut somebody, I would just trade Palmer for. I hate that it's a 27 fourth, but yeah, maybe you just cut Juwan Jennings and keep Palmer. Wish me luck. I just traded my 27 rookie draft class in James Conner for Jonathan Brooks. Oh, those are fun trades. It's like, here's my entire draft class. Production, like if you're competing this year, this might not be fun for the first few weeks because James Conner is probably going to heavily outscore Jonathan Brooks. But I think by the time we get later into the season and especially into 2025, I think that you're going to greatly appreciate the fact that you traded for Jonathan Brooks. This is uniquely we only snake first 4 rounds. Oh, interesting. Rest is auction. QB heavy league can keep one player who's under $25 in auction last year minus H-hand at 10. Nice. Debate is QB at 6 or best running back wide receiver 1 through 5 will be 3 to 4 quarterbacks taken. Ooh. Wait, why? Did I miss that it was Superflex? Oh, it is super flex. Ah, okay. I did miss that it was super flex. My bad. Um, no, I would probably still take an elite positional player there, and then probably try to see what comes back to you at 205, 204, 205, whatever pick that is, um, at the quarterback position. Because like I would take Amon Ra or AJ Brown over like CJ Stroud, over Joe Burrow or anybody like that. To where I think if you could get one of those guys in the second, or like Kyler Murray, uh, or Anthony Richardson or anybody like that, I'd much rather do that and then have Amon Ra or AJ Brown or somebody like that at the 106. Um, or I mean, holy crap, if you get uh like Brees at the 106 because of all that. Yeah. The more I'm talking to myself about this, and the fact that you think that the first 3 or 4 picks will be quarterbacks and you get somebody great at 6, I'd rather just take somebody great at 6 and then see what comes back to me for at the quarterback position in the second. That's how I go about it. Only reason I asked about CD was I got offered Wilson in 2 firsts. Holy crap. Um I would take Wilson in 2 firsts over CD Lamb. Send Kendrick Miller away from Michael Wilson. God, for this as a rebuilder, and they have Kamara. Yes, I would take Michael Wilson for this. That's pretty easy, especially as a rebuilder. But I'd rather move my dart throw over to Michael Wilson because Kendrick Miller just can't stay healthy. And Dennis Allen hates Kendrick Miller more than Kendrick Lamar hates Drake. So rough. That is rough. BC, half PPR traded Barkley, Najee for Connor Lamb and a 25 fourth. I've been told I abused the other owner. He had no run. Yes, you absolutely did. You 100% did. Holy crap, dude. That is phenomenal. Way to go. Way to get CD Lamb and James Conner. So I have Allen, Murray, and T Law. Is it worth to hold T Law or try to move him plus for CD, Chase, Bijan, or Puka? Ooh. Yes, probably. Do you not have a third quarterback? Because I don't know if you don't have like a by third quarterback. I mean, like after you trade Lawrence, you wouldn't have a third quarterback, so you wouldn't have a fourth. You don't have a fourth quarterback now. Because one thing that you could try to do is you could try to tear down from Trevor Lawrence, and maybe you could pick up. You obviously you wouldn't get somebody as phenomenal as the guys that you mentioned, but if you could trade Trevor Lawrence for, now I have to do this. It'll be a nice learning experience for them. You abuse the other owner. That's wild. I'm using the trade analyzer right now to figure out some trade ideas for you, Jeremiah. So according to the DLF trade analyzer, it might be possible to move Trevor Lawrence for Nico Collins and Bo Nix. So you'd have the upside shot on if Bo Nix is actually like good, based on how he's looked in preseason. You wouldn't need to start him ever because you're always going to start Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. But you get Nico Collins then as another really good wide receiver. Or maybe it's not Nico, maybe it's Waddle or Ayuk or Michael Pittman or DJ Moore or somebody like that. To where you're trading down from Lawrence, you still get a very quality wide receiver. You already have Ayuk, but somebody in that range. And you get an upside shot on like a Bo Nix, or maybe it's not Bo Nix, maybe it's Baker or somebody like that. Or, I like Bo Nix though, because, or maybe it's Bryce Young, a younger, not dart throw quarterback, but like a swing for the fences QB3 that you don't need to start because you have Josh Allen and Kyler Murray low enough down from Trevor Lawrence that you get a solid plus back. That might be something that you could try to do. Otherwise, or I mean, yes, in your scenario, I would trade Trevor Lawrence, and I probably wouldn't move Rice. I'd probably move Flowers. I do Trevor Lawrence and Flowers for Lamb or Chase um or Bijan or somebody like that. I do it with Flowers, but I'd try to see if I could trade down. 14-team Superflex trade Rodgers and Diggs for a 25 first. This might push me out of contention, but will give me additional pick ammo to buy back into contention. I would take the 25 first for this. For the exact reasons that BC talked about, that Diggs is going to be doo-doo meat by end of the year. I think that he's the wide receiver 3. Though to be fair, I'm often wrong, but I agree with you on this one. To be fair, I myself am also often wrong. But no, I'd rather take the 25 first because I think it'd be easier in season to move a first than it would be to move Aaron Rodgers and Stephon Diggs, especially if both of them are not competing to the standards that we think that they should be, which would drop their values, which would make them harder to trade for in season, which keeping both of them might push you out of contention if they're not producing either. To where, like I said, like I think it'd be easier to move that first in season to push you back into contention. So I just take the 25 first and see what happens. Scott, in a 12-team Superflex dynasty with a deep bench, only have 2 quarterbacks and have been toying with the idea of picking up a backup QB with the chance to take over the job, i.e. Winston, Locke, Flacco. Any suggestions? I'm not worried about Drew Lock. He's also trash. Winston and Flacco are both good options, I think. Winston is actually very interesting just because of all of the bad news that have come out on Deshaun Watson. And then I don't think Flacco has the chance to take over the job from a talent standpoint. It would have to be an injury thing. But, I mean, if anybody's going to get injured, Anthony Richardson, I feel like, is at the top of the list or near the top of the list for highest probability of getting injured just because he's already coming off of an injury. Dude did not – he has a problem sliding. I saw that in the preseason. He got tackled on his shoulder. I was like, ugh. So yeah, Winston and Flacco, I think, are the 2 that I'd be trying to pick up. And if you have any extra, like if you have, I don't know, if you have like a Juwan Jennings or a Trey Palmer, I'd drop those guys and pick up both these guys. I'm assuming if you have a deep bench that you probably have people that you can drop for them. So I would pick up both of them if you can and just see what happens. All right. An hour and 20 minutes in, basically, and we're at the end of the question. So I will throw out a final call, buzzer beater questions. We'll see. If not, then we'll just wrap it up here, and then we'll be back again next Friday. So I'll give it like 20 seconds of me just sitting here drinking water. Eli, nice. 10-team, 1 quarterback, JJ, Puka, Smith, DK, and JSN. Should I move Smith or JSN? I feel like this just depends on what you get. If it's like such a cop-out answer, I'm not like actively trying to move either one of those 2, if that kind of answers your question. Like, I'm not like, holy crap, I need to move Smith. Holy crap, I need to move JSN. But depending on how many starters that you have in this league too, considering that it's just a 10-team, 1 QB, I don't know if you start like 8 or 9 guys. If that's the case, I'd be trying to probably trade up at the position. Like if you can move Smith and JSN and get AJ Brown or get Marvin Harrison Jr. or get Garrett Wilson and like a third, that I'd probably be more willing to do than just moving Smith for something or JSN for something. Not sure what the rest of your roster looks like either, but on the surface, I'd say no, that you don't have to move either one of those 2, but there could be optimal moves to where you where it makes sense to do that. Missed the beginning of the stream, but did you talk about the Dotson impact in any life for either Diami or Olamide? No, I actually did. I did not talk about the Commanders' impact on this one. I think that Dotson is dead for Philly, but I think that this resurrects. I think it's Diami Brown is going to come out as the wide receiver too. I would be hard pressed to believe that they did this because Zacchaeus looked like he could be their wide receiver too. um, I think it has to be. I would put my chips in on Diami Brown. Luke McCaffrey, I think, is also interesting. I'd be more interested in McCaffrey than Alamedy too. But I think Diami Brown, I think that this could be an interesting opportunity for him. Um, I'm also still curious if they end up being a team that maybe tries to trade for someone. Like I know that they've said that they're out on Brandon Ayuk, but I don't know, man. That could make things interesting if they get back into the Ayuk sweepstakes. Or maybe they're the team that goes for T. Higgins or somebody along those lines, Could be interesting. Cameron, 12 Superflex 12 by 11, 6 point per touchdown. I just thought I heard something. Half PPR, half point per first down. 0.1 point per carry. Big Rube traded away Flowers, Jalen Wright in a second for Penix, a first and a third. Yay or nay on that one? I'm not the biggest Penix fan, but I feel like from a value standpoint, as a major rebuilder, I think it makes sense. I would take the first over Zay Flowers, so I'm there for that. So then Wright and a second for Penix and a third. I guess it makes sense. Yeah, I think it makes sense on both sides. I'm fine with it on both sides. I feel like Jalen Wright could be worth more by this time next year. So that's my only hesitation. Would you trade Tyreek in a second for Nico and a first? 26 second for Nico and a 25 first. That was the deal he offered besides the Montgomery and Nico package. I mean, this is more or less what I was what I was saying with what you could do with Monty after it, where I said that if you could trade Monty and a second for a first, then you would do that, or I would do that. So trading Tyreek in a second for Nico and a first feels basically like the same thing. So I would do this. I would take Nico in a first. And if you're looking at rebuilding and you don't want Dave Montgomery, I'd rather do this. So yeah, I would do this too. And then maybe that 20 to 26 second gives you an opportunity to maybe not fully compete in 2025 to where you're competing for a championship. But if that's a playoff 2026 second and that's a playoff 25 first, the difference could be pretty dramatic, or at least gives you more time to where that you can make that 26 first as late as possible next year. So I would do this. And take Nico in the first. All right. Thank you for the help. Absolutely, my man. Not a problem. Not a problem. All right. I'm waiting to see if is that booger sugar. He asked if it was finally his year, then just typed in Richardson. So sometimes, man, when you're typing on the keyboard or anything, and then you're trying to hit enter, or you accidentally hit enter and then it sends it, it's the worst. So I'm trying to see if that's what happened. And if he's typing out a much bigger, longer thing. So yeah. I mean, it's been 4 minutes since he sent that, so he might not be in here anymore. Or he's really typing. I'll give it a few more seconds to see what happens. If he's still in the chat, if it's finally his year. Booger Sugar, I want it to be your year, man. Let's make it your year. All right. I'm going to give 1 minute outro because I'm terrible ending the stream. So that should give Booger Sugar enough time. If not, uh, then just throw it into the comments of the replay of this video. And that same goes for anybody else that if you did not get a question answered, or if you want to discuss some stuff more, or if anything else from any of these trade conversations sparked any other kind of trades that you want to get some advice on, just throw it in the comment section of this video or any other video on the DLF channel. I'm the one who answers on the comments, so just throw that in there and I will respond in the comment section. But yeah, appreciate everybody for hanging out for the past like hour and a half. Football season is right around the corner. We are less than 2 weeks away from opening night. I'm so freaking excited. So yeah, like I said, appreciate you guys hanging out for the last 90 minutes. I am terrible at ending these streams, so I'm just going to hit the end stream now button. I hope you guys all have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll be back again next Friday at 12 Eastern time with another AMA. So appreciate it, guys. We'll see you. Peace.